When you have a vision, when you believe and dream, nothing in the world can stand in your way. Even things that appear to be impossible, even when the rest of the world tells you that it won't work. It is possible to break through and beat every rule and every mold if you just persist and believe. We at Data Group believe that we should strive far, look ahead, and not be afraid to dream big. Our vision is to empower Africa through technological innovation. Here are two inspiring stories from Israel and Africa about a vision that seems impossible but has been realized against all odds. The first great story is about the battle for Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. From the dawn of humanity, many armies have conquered Jerusalem, the city which David declared the capital of ancient Israel 3,000 years ago. The Temple Mount, where the temple once stood, was encompassed by a wall, and its stones, the stones of the Western Wall which still stands, symbolize the holiest site in Judaism to this day. In 1948, the Jordanians captured East Jerusalem, deported the Jews, and forbade them from entering its territory, until the week that began on June 5, 1967, when Jordan attacked together with the armies of Egypt, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Sudan, Tunisia, and many other Arab countries. Iraqi President Abdul Rahman Arif said, "Our objective is clear: to wipe Israel off the map." Israel, a small country facing all the armies of the Arab states, sent, against all the odds, its air force to bomb Jordan's airfields. In fierce fighting, infantry forces performed with inconceivable courage, without air cover, facing minefields and bunkers, and when all their commanders were killed, individual soldiers continued the campaign by themselves. After several days of bloody fighting, the voice of the Chief of Staff was heard. The Temple Mount is in our hands. It meant that Israel had succeeded against all the odds to defeat the armies of the entire Arab world, to capture Jerusalem, and return to the sacred stones of the Western Wall, the holiest site of the Jewish people. At 11 a.m. on June 7th, Jordan surrendered and Jerusalem returned to Jewish rule. This historic battle became a symbol of an impossible victory thanks to faith, vision, determination, and persistence. Another symbol of an impossible victory is the wonderful and inspiring story of Nelson Mandela, the man who did the impossible and brought down South Africa's apartheid regime and became its first president. Nelson Mandela was born in a small village in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. In his autobiography written in his prison cell, he says, "I was not born with the wish to be free. I was born free, free in every possible way. Free to run in the fields by my mother's hut, free to swim in the clear river channel that flowed in my village, free to eat under the open sky and to ride my horse. But when I realized that that was an illusion and that freedom was being taken from me, I developed a hunger to be free." As the son of a chief, Mandela obtained the best education available for South Africa's blacks at the time. When he studied at Fort Hare University, he became involved in student protests for the first time. He refused to accept the injustice and inequality that had accompanied him all his life. In his early 20s, Mandela moved to Johannesburg and was exposed for the first time to racial discrimination, which in time would be anchored in law by the apartheid regime. He worked in the mines and later as a court clerk. During his law studies, he joined the African National Congress, the ANC, South Africa's oldest black organization.
When I came into the African National Congress, that I realized that causes are only a part of the African people. That the task of the ANC was to unite the African people and out of them build a nation.
In 1955, the ANC and other human rights organizations called on all races in South Africa to go to Cape Town to ratify and support the Freedom Charter, a document which called for a democratic, multiracial, and equal society in South Africa, where all races would receive equal opportunities. Mandela, one of the event's organizers, was not permitted by the authorities to participate in it. When the apartheid regime realized that an uprising was emerging, it arrested Nelson Mandela and his colleagues in the organization, charging them with treason and sentencing them to several years in prison. In 1960, in Sharpeville, during a peaceful protest against the regime, police fired into the crowd, killing 67 people, and imposing a military crackdown, arresting thousands of opponents.
Many people who feel that it is useless and futile for us to continue talking peace and non-violence against a government whose reply is only savage attacks on an unarmed and defenseless people.
Mandela decided to launch an armed struggle. 2 years later, he was arrested by the regime.
I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the idea of a democratic and free society in which all nations live together in harmony and with equal opportunity. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die.
Nelson Mandela was sentenced to life in prison at a maximum security prison. He was 45 years old when he became prisoner 46664 and was only freed when he was 70. Although he served in hard labor, his spirit was never broken and his moral influence only grew. His young wife, Winnie, continued his path outside of prison, giving strength to the masses. While Mandela was in prison, countries worldwide began to condemn the apartheid regime.
Register on the widest possible scale their passionate protest against an evil and repulsive doctrine which says that a man's legal status, a man's political rights, a man's economic opportunities, a man's social position shall depend solely upon the color of his skin.
Violent disturbances began across the country, lasting a decade. But in the end, the corrupt apartheid regime fell. Nelson Mandela was released from prison when he was 70 years old.
I stand here before you not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you, the people. I place the remaining years of my life in your hands.
In 1994, Mandela was elected in democratic elections and became South Africa's first black president.
Never and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another.
Throughout his term, Mandela took care to instill the ideals which he believed in and fought for all the years, becoming a symbol of leadership and humanity. These two stories demonstrate the importance of vision and faith, showing how they help realize every dream ever dreamt. DataGroupIT, founded in 2007 by a highly experienced team, is proud to be the spearhead in the empowerment of Africa through innovative technologies. DataGroupIT aims to be the first distributor of choice for international ICTs and domestic African channels. This tripartite partnership creates a strong platform for innovation and disruptive technologies that empower Africa and will lead the continent to a bright future.